Welcome to Focusing on God's Word with Pastor Everton Jeffers. Focusing on God's Word illuminates the Word of God by explaining the Scriptures and conducting word studies using Scripture to support Scripture in the revelation of His Word. Matthew 11:15 said, "He that hath ears to hear, let him hear." As he ministered to us today, here now is Pastor Everton Jeffers.
A pleasant good day once again. It is your good friend back with you this morning to speak to you from focusing on God's Word. I want to take this opportunity to once again thank all of you for watching this program each and every Sunday morning, Sunday evening, whenever you watch it. And I want to pay special tribute to the sponsor of this program. We give God thanks for you and pray that God will continue to keep you in health and strength, you and your family. Today I want to look or focus on the subject of how to recover from what was lost. And today I recognize that there are people who are sitting in church. They're sitting in church building, but they have lost what they had and don't know how to recover it. Some people at one time, they were ministering the gospel. They were singing in the church choir. There were Sunday school teachers. They were worship team leaders, men's fellowship leaders, women's fellowship leaders, and somewhere along the line, they have lost that communication they had with God. There was a break somewhere, and it is important for them to note that they can recover. There is no need for you to continue to sit in church and continue to weep and mourn about what you had and what others have and you were there before. What you need to do is to get back to where you were in God and regain that which was taken from you. In 2 Samuel chapter 30 and verse 6, and we will read from there, what we had in this particular subject is David went to battle with 600 men. And when they came back from battle, the place that their wives and children were staying was burnt to the ground by invading forces, and all who remained were taken by the invading forces. Life is very funny, because David went out with 600 men, and when he came back and they saw the devastation and that their families were taken, they wanted to stone David right on the spot, even though all of them went together. And so I want to focus on how to regain something that was lost. And especially if it has to do with your family members, how do you regain that which was lost? The first thing that we must pay attention to is that you cannot lose what you never had. You cannot lose what you never had. And so David and his men, they had families. And what they did, which was wrong, which I'm going to be speaking on to show you how sometimes those of us who minister the gospel and are involved in the gospel made some real serious mistakes sometimes, which impacts our families. You're going to see the mistake that David and his men made, and you're going to see why we must not make the same mistakes that David and his men did. Now, in order to lose something, as I said, you must first have it. And also, there are only two ways that something can be given up or can be taken from us. And we're going to focus on them this morning. And let's look at those two things. In order to lose something, two things must happen. It must be taken from us. And when I say it must be taken from us, that means that he who took it from you was greater than you. Or you left it careless and it was taken from you. All of God's servants who goes to battle on God's behalf and on behalf of God's people must never leave their family unprotected. If you are a child of God, if you are a servant of God, serving in ministry, never go to war without your children or family being protected. That was the first mistake that David and his men did. They made that mistake. What they did, all of them went to battle, leaving the children and women behind with no men to protect the women. First mistake they made. And this is exactly what happened. Some of us are out there on the field, fighting battles for God, winning battles for others, and we fail to cover our children. And in the process, the enemy comes in and take our children while we're there protecting other people and battling on other people's behalf. And we're going to see this as we look at Job. In Job chapter 1 and verse 5, Job made a statement that many people don't really understand. But Job is one of the greatest family men that I have ever seen in scripture. And let me tell you why. In Job 1:5, Job's children, when it was their birthdays, they would meet from house to house to feast and have fun and do whatever they wanted to do. Job was such a righteous man that guess what he did? He didn't allow them to get away with that and allow them to go as they are. Because of his righteousness, the Bible says, and when the day of their feasting were over, Job would send for his children to purify them, rising early in the morning to offer burnt offering for all of them. Listen to Job's thoughts. For Job thought, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. And this, the Bible says, was Job's regular practice. You see this? This is important for all of us as Christians to note. Don't serve God and go to battle with you covered and your family not covered. That is why so many families are messed up. That is why our children are the way they are, because we are going to battle and we're not covering them. We're not leaving the protection that we should in terms of covering for them. And that's the mistake that David and his men made. And that is how the enemy was able to move in, burn down, and took all the spoils, to include the women and the children. The second thing that we need to note is that if you lose something and you did not leave it careless for someone to take, then how else could you have lost it? Let's look at how the second way you can lose whatever it is that God has given to you. By you giving it away. You willingly gave it away or willingly denied it to allow yourself to follow after something or someone else in the time of crisis. You denied it. Let's look at this. And I'm going to show you. A typical example of this is Peter. Peter said that he will never deny Jesus Christ. He would die with Jesus. But when crisis time came, when they told Peter, yes, you, Peter, you was with Jesus. He says, listen, I don't know the man. And 3 times, Peter denied Jesus. And we see that when the time was right, Jesus restored him. But I want you to notice that the only how that the enemy will be able to take certain things from us is if we hand it over to him. Demas, in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 10, the Bible says, "For Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and has departed to Thessalonica." We need to understand this, that sometimes the devil did not take anything from us. What we did, we gave it to him. We must not turn over that which God has blessed us with to nobody or to no devil. And so there are two ways. The first one, through carelessness, which is what David and his men did. They went away, leaving their children and wives and women unprotected, and so the enemy was able to move in. And the other way in which that can be done is when you as an individual decided, listen, I do not want Christianity anymore. Guess what happened? I will deny Christ for something else or for someone else. That is how you can lose what you have. And those are the two scenarios that I want to share with you. Now in verse 4, we have a very powerful thing that happened in verse 4. And it says, "Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until they were too exhausted to weep any longer." If you're going to recover what was lost, there must be sorrow over losing it. If you're going to recover what was lost, there must be sorrow over losing it. If it does not cause you sorrow for the loss, then it simply means it has no value. David and his men wept because they lost the most dearest thing to their heart, meaning that they have lost their wives, and they have lost their children because of their negligence. And so we see here that when they came back and recognized what had happened, can you imagine weeping until you can't weep anymore? But most of us would have done that. To lose a loved one, to lose your entire family would have caused most of us to weep. And not only did these men wept, but they wept until they could not do it any longer. There was no more tears for them to weep. So if you're going to recover what was lost, there must be godly sorrow over losing it. The only how you would not be sorrowful is if what you had no value. Now in verse 5, it says, "Now David's two wives had been captured, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite." In recovering what was lost, two things will always drive you to recover them. If we're going to recover what was lost, these that I've mentioned are going to be the driving forces that cause us to go after them. And I've mentioned in the first one, there must be sorrow over what was lost. Your love and your value that you place on what was lost are going to be paramount. So, 1, the sorrow; 2, the love; and 3, the value you place on what was lost. My problem is this: what value do you place on lives? The focus of these men, and I want to notice, because many people, what they do is that they focus on the material things first. David and his men did not do that. David and his men focused on the women and children, not the material thing. So it shows you exactly where their values were. It is important to put your values in the right place. What was the focus here? The women and the children, not the material things. They wept because their wives, their women, and their children were taken. Now, in order to know what you have lost, you need to go back to where you have lost it. Now, David and his men could not have known that their village were burnt, and that also the women and children were taken, except they go back to where they started. And it's when they went back to where they started that they recognized that their village was burnt and that the women were taken. And so the Bible said that they went back to Ziklag. Now some of you have lost ministry and you're somewhere sitting in some church doing nothing. In order for you to get back that which was lost, you're going to have to make the same decisions that David and his men made before they were able to get back their women and children to go back to Ziklag. Go back to where you first lost it. For some of you, you know where you lost your ministry. Some of you know when or why you are no longer on the worship team. Some of you know why you're no longer leading the men. Some of you know why you're no longer leading the women. What you have lost, once God has called you to that, you can regain it, but you must go back to where you first lost that thing. And my thing to you this morning, today, is simply this. Was it because of this why you gave it up? Or was it taken from you? If it was taken from you, how was it taken from you? Were you careless in what you were doing, leaving it unprotected, unattended? Or was it a case that you denied it in the process for someone else? Because some of you are giving up ministry for men and women, and then those men and women turn against you. I want to encourage you this morning. Even though you would have given up ministry for a man or a woman, or for a job, or for greener pastures, as you might have seen it at that time, God will always take you back. You want me to repeat that again? Even though you have given up ministry, wherever God has called you, and you have given it up for a man, for a woman, for what you think might have been greener pasture, God will take you back, but you must return from where you came. You must go back where the whole breakdown started, because you must go back to where it is. And so that is something that I want to make sure I leave with you. Now, going back might not always have to be physical, but make sure you go back, because where you lost it is your starting point to your recovery. David had to go back to Ziklag, he and his men. And let me say this and use simple term. Why are you not walking with God today? Why is that thing that was taken from you still in somebody else's possession, somewhere lying down while you're sitting in church doing nothing? Let me tell you what. Because you have not gone back to where you have lost it. Go back there. Let God take you back there. You don't need to physically go back there, but spiritually you can go there. Go back to where you lost it. Going back might not always have to be physical, but make sure you go back, because where you lost it is your starting point to your recovery. Peter lost it when he denied Jesus. The prodigal lost it when he left his father. And you notice what both of them did? Peter went back to Jesus, and the prodigal went back to his father. You must go back from whence you came. You must go back from whence you lost it. You know where you lost yours. I can't tell you where and when you did, but you know where you lost it. Go back there like David did and talk to God, and God will help you to regain it. Now let's look at verse 6. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Now, I am perplexed by this, because all of us agree to go and raid a particular place. We were successful in our raids. All of us agreed to leave the women and the children behind. But when we came back, everybody turned on me alone and want to stone me. How does that look when all of us agreed? But I'm going to show you something about the true men of God and those people who are usually hanging on. I'm going to show you what happened. And this is how you can tell the difference between the true man of God, a man after God's own heart, and those who are just following the man who is truly after God's own heart. Watch this. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his son and daughter. Each one of them, to include David, was bitter because their sons and daughters and women were taken. So everybody was bitter. Each person cried. But watch this. David did something that the others did not. But no more tears until they were tired because they were coming back from battle. But David, he told himself, I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to give in to what is presently existing. All the others have already thrown up their hand, and they felt the easiest way out was to stone David. I'm going to say some things to you today, especially to those of us who are leaders, especially to those of us who hold position. I want you to pay attention to this, because sometimes this is the position we're going to find ourselves in, and we're going to have to get out of it. Watch what David did. The Bible says, but David felt strengthened and encouraged in the Lord his God. When everybody is bitter and vexed, the first thing we must remember, we are the leaders. We don't give up. We stand up. We don't throw in the towel. We hold on to the towel. We must be the last man standing. We must be the last set of people standing as leaders. The other thing, we cannot behave the way they behave. They were bitter with David. They wanted to stone David. But look what David did. The Bible says, but David felt strengthened and encouraged in the Lord his God. We can't look to them. Let them look to us. And when they look to us, we look to God. That is where David's strength came from. David was as much human as they are. David was as much hurt as they were. But guess what? David took a different focus. He never focused on the situation that exists, but he took his focus to God. And by taking his focus to God, David was encouraged. David was strengthened. In Psalm 46:1, God is our refuge and strength, mighty and impregnable, a very present help and well-proved help in times of trouble. This is why David can write these type of psalm, because David recognized that when there is trouble, the person that he can always turn to is God. That's why David wrote the way he wrote. Watch this also. Hard times will either make you bitter or make you better. Hard times made the men with David bitter. Hard time made David better. David turned to the Lord and he was strengthened and encouraged. We have to do the same thing that David did. Focus on God, and we will not become bitter but become better. We will not become discouraged but become encouraged, and we will also be strengthened by Almighty God. I'm speaking to somebody this morning who is going through a difficult time. You're sitting around, you're wondering, you're looking at people who are now functioning in similar positions to yours. You're looking at your family and you're saying, hey, I'm losing my family. I'm losing all that I have. And you're wondering, how do I get it back? Do like what David did. Watch this. He immediately connected back to the Lord so he could get his guidance from him. You notice? David never connected himself to the men. David reconnected himself to God. And when he reconnected himself to God, God began guiding him. In times of plenty, oh my Lord, I want to say this to church leaders. In times of plenty, you have plenty friends. When things are going good, you have plenty friends. You have plenty followers. But in times of crisis, you will prove you only have a friend. Let me explain that to you. When things are going good, plenty people surround you. They're there saying that they will help you. When David went out, he went out with 600 men who helped him to conquer another place. But when crisis hit, David stood alone. And the only friend that David had when crisis time comes was Jesus Christ or God. Sometimes you will find out you only have really one true friend. Proverbs 18:24, this is what it says. The man of too many friends, chosen indiscriminately, will be broken in pieces and come to ruin. But there is a true loving friend who is reliable and stick closer than a brother. That friend is Jesus Christ. We see here, David was left alone. 601 men went out. 600 turned against one man. Tell me, how would that work? And all of them went under the same heading for one purpose. In verse 7 it says, David said to Abiathar the priest, Amalek's son, please bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought him the ephod. When you lost something, make preparation to consult God about it. Whatever you lost, you don't ever try first to go after it before you consult God to find out what is God's will for me in this situation. Sometimes some of the people, and I'm going to say this as we continue, some of the people that God has moved from your life, sometimes you need to remember it is not you moving them. God recognized that the time in your life has come and passed. Let me get into that in more details as we go through the message. When you lost something, make preparation to consult with God. Inasmuch as this is good, this is where a lot of people stay. Oh, okay, God, so why this happened? And how come this happened? And why this happened? Now, consultation is good. But you must never stop at consultation. You must always move on. And this is what verse 8 actually shows us. The Bible says in verse 8, David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this band of raiders? Will I overtake them? Now, before I get into that, let's look at this. Never go after what you have lost before you inquire from God what to do. Do not go after anything that you have lost except you first inquire from God, what do I do? David clearly showed that in verse 8. David inquired of the Lord, saying, and I want you to notice this, because a lot of us beat around the bush. I believe when we're praying to God that we must adore God, we must confess to God, we must thank God, and then make our supplication to God. Acts. Anytime you get into prayer, try and use acts. Adoration to God, confession to God, thanksgiving to God, and then you make your supplication to God. David was very specific in his prayers. He never beat around the bush. When the time came for him to pray, the Bible says, David inquired of the Lord, saying, look at what he says. Very specific inquiry. Shall I pursue this band of raiders? See how short that prayer is? Hear the second part of his prayer. Will I overtake them? What a powerful prayer. But look how short it is. Shall I pursue this band of raiders? Will I overtake them? And I love God. You know why I love God? I love God. I love my Jesus because, listen, David's prayer was short. Jesus' answer, or God's answer to David's prayer, was also short. Listen to what he says to David. God was very specific in his answer. And he answered him, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will certainly recover the captive, or you will recover all, as the King James Version put it. You notice? Specific was David. Shall I? Will I? God says, yes, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will certainly rescue all. Now, I'm so glad that David never stopped there. This was not new to David. David was a man who made many of his decisions by first consulting God and then acting. Many of us, we make our decision, and then when we mess up, we consult God. We're putting the cart before the horse. What we must do, and David is teaching us that lesson, before we make our decisions, consult God. Having consult God in this particular book, chapter 30 of Samuel, we now recognize that also in 1 Samuel 23, he did it before. Listen to what he says. Then David inquired of the Lord, verses 4 and 10 of 1 Samuel 23. Again, and the Lord answered him, arise, go down to Keilah, for I will hand over the Philistines to you. In verse 10, then David says, O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has heard from certain that Saul intends to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Listen to verse 11. Will the men of Keilah hand me over to him? Will Saul come down just as your servant has heard? Watch the Lord's reply. I pray thee, tell your servant, and the Lord says, he will come down, and he will do all that you heard, because of David's presence there in that place. So it is not something that we should do once in a while. You could see that David was a regular consulter of the Lord. He kept praying and asking God, should I go down there? Yes. Are they going to come and get me? Yes. Are they going to destroy the city because of me? Yes. So David knew that he had a relationship with his God, and he knew that when he contact his God or inquire of his God always answers him. Now, there's some areas that we need to pay some attention to, and they're important. Some of them I've mentioned before, but I want to put them down in blotters so that you can see them, and you can always go back to them when you find yourself in a crisis like David did. The key to recovering what was lost are these. Be specific in your prayers. Don't beat around the bush. Tell God what you want. Tell him what happened and what you want. 2, wait for God's instruction. It might take long, but wait on God's instruction. This is very important for us to note. He inquired of God. He waited for God's instruction. 2, when you get God's instruction, obey it. Obey God's instruction. And if you don't remember the others, don't ever forget this. When you're going, make sure God is going with you. Make sure God is going with you. Don't you dare go into any battle leaving God behind. In I think it's in 1 Samuel, when the Israelites went to battle against the Philistine. Can you imagine? They left the Ark of the Covenant back in Shiloh and went to battle. How ridiculous. How can a Christian go to battle without God? The ark represents God's presence, but these people were so backslidden. They lost it so bad that they went to battle, leaving the presence of God in the ark at Shiloh. What a shame. And some of us are losing our battles big time because we are going to battle without God. If you don't remember anything else, remember this: when you're going to battle, make sure God is leading you there, or don't go. Verse 9. In your obedience to God's command to recover all, I want to leave a few nuggets with you. These nuggets we need to remember because they are important. When we look at it, David and his men were traveling for many days. They came back and they were tired. And to go again means that it's going to take a lot of energy. So it means in order for them to be successful, in order for them to go again, they're going to be strengthened from somewhere. When you're going, get your strength from God. Let God tell you what to say. Let God tell you what to do. You don't go in your own strength and you don't go with your own ideas. You will mess up. In your journey to recovery, you're going to have to leave some people behind. Sometimes some people think that, well, I need the whole group. Let me say this to you. In your journey to recover, some people you have with you were not empowered to make the full journey. There were some men that were with David. They were just too living weak to continue, and David had to do something. Those persons who were empowered to be with you up to a particular place, don't be discouraged in leaving them behind. You cannot stay back with them. So leave them where they are, knowing that when you're coming back, they should be strengthened so you can take them back with you. Let me also say this to you. God placed some people in your life sometimes, and they're supposed to only be with you from here to there. And then some of them, they will just leave you and you're wondering, what did you do? Or what did you not do? You did not do anything wrong. It was just that God had them to be with you up until this particular stage before God moved them away from you to go and do something else somewhere else. Don't feel discouraged sometimes when God moves people from you. He knows what he's doing. Allow him to run the show. Second thing I want to say to you, leave them behind and go forward with those who are empowered for the journey. Some people are supposed to go the full journey with you. Some people are supposed to only go part of the journey. And so David had to leave some people behind, and David went forward with 400 men. So out of the 600, I think 200 remained at Besor, and he had to move on with the 400. Whenever you're going to battle, be on the offenses. When God sends you to battle, you don't let the enemy come to you. You go to the enemy. God send you. Go to the enemy. You be on the offensive. When David met Goliath, most people would have run from Goliath. David ran towards Goliath and told Goliath, oh, you come to me with this and that, but I come to you in the name of the Lord Jesus, and this is what I'm going to do to you. When you go into battle, tell the enemy what God is going to do with him. Be on the offensive. Tell him. Don't run from him, because you know that you're empowered by God. Don't run from him. Run towards him. The other thing I want to share with you, if you're going to win back your family, you're going to have to fight. Yep. If you're going to win back your family, you're going to have to fight. David them could stay there and say, okay, God says, yeah, we're going to get them back. And so let's relax until they come back. And so they folded their arms, and they could have. Okay, yeah, 2 days, yeah, 3 days, yeah, 4 days, yeah, 5 days. But guess what? Sometimes you have to attack the enemy and tell the enemy, not my children, not my wife, not my mother, not my father, not my niece, not my nephew. We need to speak some things. We need to say some things. God says, listen, if you say, this is what we need to understand. If you say to that mountain, if you say to that tree, if you say, sometimes God don't want us to actually physically get into battle. He's saying, you say it. Say it. Some of us have our mouth closed, and in our mouth is life and death. In our mouth there is power. Sometimes you don't need to even be close to the situation. You need to just stand up where you are and speak over the situation. That's what we need to do. Take the offense to the enemy. If we're going to win back, we're going to have to open our mouth and we're going to have to speak. Verse 17. And David smote them from twilight even unto the evening of the next day. And they escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled. When God tells us to pursue, we must never focus on the numbers we have. For usually the odds are against us. Let me say this. God don't usually give you the same amount of people that you need to go into battle. God always have less, because you and God is equal to 1,000,000. You see, this is what we need to understand. Sometimes we're looking at ourselves and we're going like, God, you sure me alone can go into this? Duh, you forget that is you and God going, and that with you and God, that is like trillions. That's what we need to understand. David had 400 men. The other thing about it, these men must have been very tired. While these other men were there, relaxing, drinking and making merry. But guess what happened? The Bible said that from morning until night, David and his men killed these men, and 400 men escaped. You know how many men David had? 400. So if 400 escaped, and David and his men killed so many men from twilight until evening, you tell me, weren't they outnumbered? Yes, they were. When God tells you to pursue, we must never focus on the number we have, for the odds are usually against us. Remember, David and his men were very weak. So how did they so quickly regain strength? It lies in these words. And this is something that I want us to recognize today. All of us as Christians should remember this. How were these men able to regain this strength so quickly? This is what happened. It lies in these words. When God said to David, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will certainly rescue the captive. That was the victory cry. When God spoke that to David, David had already won. Even before he actually went there, the victory was already David's, because God said it to him. Always remember this. Anything God say over you, even before you see it, that you become, or that will happen. Oh, Pastor, how can you arrive? How do you arrive at that? Let me show you. In Judges chapter 6 and verse 12, the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon. This is what he called Gideon, and said, mighty hero, mighty man of God, the Lord is with you. Now we all know that Gideon was a coward. He was hiding from the Midianites. But guess what? When God said to him, you're a mighty man of valor, from the moment God says that over him, that's exactly who Gideon became. Always remember that. God says something to you. If he tell you go and you will win, go, you're going to win. If he tell you don't go because you're going to lose, don't go because you're going to lose. If he said that you are mighty, go because you know he has just granted you strength. Anything God spoke over you, that you will become. And that is exactly why the men that went with David were empowered, because God says, pursue, for you will certain overtake them and you will certain recover all. We see David going to battle to regain his family today. Physically, when David went, what he did, he took sword, he took men, and he went on foot, and guess what happened? He was able to regain his family. I want you to notice this. There is a difference in the way we fight today. David, he inquired of God, and God told him, go, and he will recover all. Today, that's not how we fight. God has made available to us two very powerful tools that we use to regain our families. And as I close out today, I want to leave them with you. Don't ever forget them. Whenever a crisis comes, whenever you lost something and you want to regain it, just remember to go back where you start. But just remember these two powerful tools that God has made available to us. Let's look at what they are. One, the Word. I've mentioned it before. God wants us at times to open our mouth and say what the Bible says over situation. Hey, not you, devil. You're not going to take my children, my wife, my mother or father. That's a prayer. The other tool that God has made available to us that a lot of us don't use and that we should be using every living day is prayer. We are powerful when we are on our knees. We don't need to be in Russia. We don't need to be in America. We don't need to be in Australia when we're praying. All we need to do is to be in prayer. And whatever we're praying for in Australia, God will answer, because there's no boundaries or limits to prayer. Don't you know that? That's why David was able to say to God, shall I pursue? And shall I recover? And God said, you pursue and you will recover all. That's the power of prayer. Some of us believe that we need to pray certain types of prayer. Let me say this to you. You don't need to pray like some people pray who can call words for how long till thy kingdom come. Tell God what you want. Tell him how you know to say it, what you want, and watch your Father recover for you everything that was taken from you. I am speaking to somebody today, backslidden, gone back into the world. You're losing your family, you're losing your possession, you're losing a number of stuff. You have made one careless mistake, and that mistake is costing you so much. You're crying because you can't see your children. Your wife don't want to see you. You can't go back to your home. You can't get back into the ministry. You know God has given you a ministry, but guess what happened? You messed up. Let me say this. God is not finished with you yet. Go back from whence you lost it. Speak to God. Ask God, shall I pursue it? And he will answer you. That's my word for you this morning. God bless you today. I pray that those of you who sat and listened to this, that you would call a friend, call someone that you know who have missed it, and let them know. Come and listen to this message this morning. I think that God is speaking here, and he's speaking to you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day in the Lord. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Focusing on God's Word with Pastor Everton Jeffers, a Bible-based study revealing the Word of God. You can follow Pastor Jeffers on God's First Radio at 102.9 FM from 1 p.m. each Sunday, or on Abundant Life Radio at 103.9 FM. You can also follow him on Facebook or the YouTube channel. Thank you once again for listening to Focusing on God's Word. May God continue to bless you.